call the evening meeting to order, please, and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, our treasurer is delayed at an airport unexpectedly. So our pro tem established at the beginning of the year, she lets me know, Lori, is you, just in case you didn't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lucky you.
Yes, so you will be our treasurer pro tem and handling the minutes for us this evening. Thank you so much for handling that. Let's begin with roll call, please.
Well, I'm here, so. Yes. Ms. Spiritu?
Here.
Ms. Laird?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
And Mr. Price.
May I have a motion to approve or amend the minutes, please?
So moved. Second.
So moved by Mrs. Espiritu, second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion?
No.
Roll call, please.
Me, or Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Me. Mrs. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Okay. There is no legislative report this evening. Are there any walk-on items?
No, ma'am.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chantel Laird, and I'm the Vice President of the school board. I'll be facilitating the meeting this evening in Tom's absence. He's enjoying some great time with his family, and we wish him safe travels for that. Before we begin the community involvement, I'd like to provide some information. For those of you who were here last meeting, I was not. I was ill that evening. I did get an opportunity to watch the video. And like the other board members, I've received communications and I've read your emails and so on. What I'm observing is I think there is some misunderstanding on a few things procedurally. So to open it up, I want to go over that. And as all of you know, this is an important community conversation. And it's gotten out there. We've had a lot of involvement, a lot of participation. People from all the way in Columbus that know me have called and said, hey, what's going on up there? So what you have is a packet that Mr. Detweiler has put together for everyone, included in your agenda. We have people watching at home tonight who are new to the conversation. And some of you have been involved from the beginning. So I'm going to first get us all on the same page chronologically with the facts in the order of events as they've happened. So let's begin with that. So the first one, and on the overhead here, John, do we have the release time for religious instruction?
I do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You'll notice the adoptive date on the policy that you have is 2016. So there's been some question as did our school district start a new policy? The answer to that is no. The policy has been in place since 2016. So the policy is not new. Some are wondering what the policy means. The policy in a nutshell, which is right in front of you, says that with parental permission and at parental discretion, the school may dismiss a student to participate in religious education of their parents' choice for one class period of the week, not to miss a core class. There are a couple other things in there as far as providing written permission and so forth. So I think that's one of the main misconceptions that's out there in the community. One is that the religious instruction is taking place here on school campus. So to begin with there, it is not. The law of Ohio allows school districts to provide parents a choice for their students to participate in this if they wish to do that. It cannot be held on school property, and it is not. It cannot be provided with tax dollars used to fund the school. And it is not. These are private organizations that put programs together for students to attend should their parent choose to allow them to participate. So up to this point, the policy in place as of the beginning of this meeting, just bringing everybody to where we're at right now. As of right now, as we sit, this policy is in place. It does allow parents to make that particular choice. So next order of events, I want to have you turn to the distribution of materials in schools. I think this is one of the areas where some confusion happened. A flyer was distributed, and I think the words "coming to Fremont City Schools" created a vision that some misinterpreted. So as I stated earlier, this is not happening within the school. This is off-school premise. Students are dismissed should their parents want to allow them to participate in that. Now, I will tell you that Mr. Detweiler is in charge of procedure. School boards are in charge of policy. Administrators are in charge of procedure and implementing those policies. Upon hearing some of the concerns and confusion that was created with some of the language of the flyer, Mr. Detweiler did have a change to procedure. Now, change in procedure does not require a vote of the board. It is not a change of policy. That procedural change is to include a non-endorsement disclaimer, something that lets community members know the difference between programs that are sponsored by the school and happening on school campus and are under the vetting authority and responsibility of the school versus programs that are not, that are at the parental discretion and outside of the vetting authority of the school board. So I commend you, John, on that adjustment and hearing the community and responding with an adjustment in that procedure. If you take a look at the flyer, it says Fremont here. I'd like to point out that middle disclaimer there. This is all literature, brochures, flyers must contain the following disclaimer. Distribution of this material through the school does not constitute or imply the Fremont City School District's endorsement or approval of any product, service, message, point of view, organization, or activity. Now, as we move on in the meeting a little bit later, I do have some thoughts that I want to share with my colleagues on that particular policy, the distribution of materials, and some thoughts on that disclaimer. But just to let you know, the next order of events that happened as a result of communication with the community. And then I think that brings us to, where is the board right now on the position, and procedurally, what needs to happen for the board to act on what we've been asked to do? So I just want to review. I believe there are 3 asks. Those in favor of the policy have asked that it be retained as is. But in hearing some of you in the community, I think the conversation has left some uncertainty on that side, who have maybe made some investment into programs and are unsure if they're able to continue. On the other side, there are 2 asks. One is to either repeal or modify the policy. And there's also been a request for the board to have public discussion on the policy. So those are the 3 asks that we have on the table. I want to explain procedurally where we're at with each. So what you have is a copy of the policy that says what we have to do if we suspend a policy. There are different options that the board can take here. We can keep the policy as is. We can repeal it. We can respend it, or we can suspend it, or we could modify it. If we keep it as is, procedurally, nothing official needs to happen. And I think that's a misunderstanding with the community and board procedurally. When a policy is in place, no vote needs to be taken to keep it. Procedurally, it stands. For a change to be made, a board member needs to make a motion for the change. So where we're at as of right now, in this moment of the meeting, there is no motion of record that anyone has made to make a change. So as of this moment, the policy stays the same procedurally. If a board member decides that they want to suspend the policy, that's what's in front of you here, the actions that would need to be taken for that. One, upon a majority vote of the board present and voting at a meeting in which the proposed suspension has been described in writing. In this case, none of the members have provided any motion to do that in writing. So that leaves us to number 2, which means it would require a unanimous vote of members of the board present if no notice has been given. So to suspend it, it would require a unanimous vote of us together. If we're going to repeal a policy, that follows standard operating procedure. Someone makes a motion. If there is a second, it goes to the floor for discussion and vote. And at that point, it would be based on the majority vote. So for those who are at home new to the conversation, those who have been a little confused on what brought us here and where are we and what are the next steps procedurally, I think that brings everybody up to date as far as any voting goes. When it comes to the request to have open discussion, keep in mind, if a board member wants the policy to stay, there is no official action that they do take by procedure. So with discussion, there have been a few community discussions on the matter. And in some of those cases, board members have commented, and in others, they haven't. So that has taken place. I think some perhaps are hoping that board members will simply state their position. So maybe feeling like there's been an ask and then you're waiting and waiting. So I will tell you this. I have listened to the board meeting comments where I was not present. I was present for some. I've read all the emails that we've received. I personally, after hearing what all of you have to share this evening, will provide you. I will decide where I stand and I will state that publicly so that, you know, I think that that's fair. If we're going to make a choice, a part of transparency is that you hear from us what we think of it rather than leaving uncertain. But I want to make something clear. That's my personal choice of how to participate in the board meeting as a board member. None of the board members are required to do so. If they choose to let it stand, they don't have to say anything. I will open the floor after public comment to allow for that should they choose. But please don't make an assumption if they choose to let it stand without action that they've not participated. You know, sometimes inaction is stating your action. In this case, if that makes sense. All right. The last thing I want to go over before we begin is your policy on public participation at a board meeting. There's been some questions on this. I want to state too, if you notice there, this policy that we're going to follow tonight was adopted in 2016. So what I'm going to require in the meeting is not new. Each person will be required to come to the podium, state your name and your address. You'll be given 5 minutes. There is also a limit of public participation of 30 minutes. If you take a look here, that's mentioned in the first sentence and then in that middle paragraph. If we exceed 30 minutes by policy, that requires a majority of vote of the board to do that. So we have to follow policy this evening. That's what I'll be implementing. So I'm going to ask 2 things. Mr. Detweiler,
Yes, ma'am.
will you be our 5-minute timer?
I will.
Somebody else have a cell phone that they can do the 30. Are you able to do the 30 for us tonight, Lori? Okay. We'll have one person speaking, as Robert's Rules of Order guides us to do. One piece of information on the floor discussed at a time, one person speaking at a time. And if I may, I'd like to ask that whomever has not had an opportunity to speak yet, maybe get a chance to go first, since we do have a limit of time on this, so people have a chance to be heard. If there's anyone that has not had an opportunity to take the podium yet and would like to tonight, would you raise your hand, please? Okay, so we have 3. I'd like to begin with you. If you'd like to come up this evening and state your name and address for record, please, and help me not forget you over there. We got 2 there. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Adrienne Robertson. Actually, Dr. Adrienne Robertson now. I'm still getting used to that. Just finished my PhD. I am a graduate of Fremont City Schools and a concerned advocate for kids. 812 Vargas Court is the address. So tonight I'll be reading a letter that myself and some other concerned citizens have written up regarding the LifeWise Academy. Dear Fremont City School Board members, we are writing this letter to express our concerns regarding LifeWise Academy. As concerned parents, community members, and advocates for our students, we do not believe this program should be offered during the school day and ask that you vote against excusing students from school to attend the academy. While we have many apprehensions about the program, here are some of our most salient concerns. The impact on the school day and the disruption of classes. The priority of not missing core classes is critical, but the special subjects are also critical to students. As a former school counselor, I've worked with a lot of kids who are into music, art, gym, and anyone who understands that understands how critical it can be for those kids to participate in those classes. These courses are offered on specific days of the week, and not all grades have their special classes simultaneously. According to a Fremont elementary school schedule that was obtained, it designates 45 minutes for courses such as art, music, and wellness. We were able to obtain a lesson curriculum from LifeWise, and from the minimal time that was added, it was about 40 minutes. This does not include transportation times or potential issues such as behavioral or weather. Teachers already manage multiple disruptions on a typical school day. And adding another disruption does not benefit anyone from our schools, especially with our current mental health crisis and the struggles that our kids are having in returning back to school. The credentials of the teachers facilitating the program. The population of Fremont City School District is almost 50% students of color. Will the teachers consist of people of different races within the Fremont community? Will there be background checks? And will the teachers have previous experience working with elementary age children? Step 8 in LifeWise's 10-step launch plan says that the team will receive training for 2 to 6 weeks. We are questioning the length of this training. Will the training include working with diverse student populations, race, ability, SES? Lack of transparency to the community. Students received a flyer on the last day of school regarding LifeWise Academy. Many parents may not have received the flyer, and many parents that I have spoke with have not were unable to discuss the flyer, and some of those saw it and essentially tossed it because there was no contact information or no other details. It was vague, and there was also limited advertisement for the information meeting at Grace Community Church in late June. It makes the leaders of this program appear secretive and increases concern surrounding transparency and parent communication. Our last is white nationalism in politics. This appears to be very political in nature. Republicans have tried for decades to impose Christian nationalism in the United States. LifeWise is a part of a nationalist movement that in part is rooted in white supremacy. They wish to impose their views on everyone, and the goal is to take away the rights of certain groups of people in an effort to maintain white male supremacy. This effort appears to be the Republicans' latest effort to groom young people to be part of that movement. So along with this letter, we also have signed petitions from members of the community and concerned parents. We ask that you consider all students, staff, and parents in this decision because it impacts all stakeholders of Fremont City School District, especially those of marginalized populations. Again, almost 50% of the students in the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. There were two over here that raised their hand that hadn't had a chance to speak yet. You, sir?
Hi, my name is Brandon Reinhart. My address is 1422 Clinton Street. I'm going to be speaking briefly. I just would like to voice my support for the Pledge of Allegiance and for the LifeWise. I know that these will be good things for the community and the children will benefit. I don't believe there will be any negative impacts. It will be all good. So I would just like to support it. And that's my voice. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was one other person.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brienne Wookie. I live at 2646 Oak Harbor Road in Fremont. I am a 2007 graduate of Fremont Ross High School, as my husband is as well, 2004. I am an RN for my job, and most importantly, the mother to 4 young daughters, 3 of whom are currently enrolled in Fremont City Schools. And I just wanted to come up here and speak to the board as a mom of children in this district and voice my support for the policy that allows for release time for religious education. I watched the last board meeting and I was encouraged by the many members of our community that are in support of this program specifically. I myself had never heard of LifeWise until a couple of months ago. I did do some of my own research, and I do think that it is a good thing for our community, with the emphasis on it being completely optional. Every child is welcome. No tax dollars are being used. All of the funds and donors will be from this community. I know that there were some concerns raised about disruptions with kids leaving and returning to the classroom. This program, as has been stated, doesn't take any time away from core classes, and the program administrators have stated they would work with the school principals to find the time that would work best for their day and least disruptive, working around the school's schedule. Some might have concerns about children missing specials time, and I understand that, but that is the parent's choice to decide if that's worth it or not for their child. On another note, I graduated high school in 2007, and I do remember many things being scheduled during the school day, such as leaving early for sports competitions, off-site club functions, non-educational trips, even missing core classes for those. I have a lot of, I'm sure we all do, have a lot of family and friends in education, and sometimes I hear about the behavioral challenges they face in the classroom today. And so, in my opinion, a character building program like LifeWise that offers students the opportunity to make connections, have positive role models, and learn biblical values such as honesty, kindness, respect for their teachers and fellow students, and the benefits of working hard. I think that that would be very beneficial. And as we heard from some at the last meeting, mental health challenges, as we all know, are increasingly prevalent. And this program, I believe, would help those kids by teaching them that they are loved and they are valued. So just from seeing the amount of people that have attended the last couple of board meetings, we have a community here in Fremont that cares about our kids. And that's a common ground, and I think we can all be thankful for that. Not everyone is going to agree with Bible education in this program, and that's their right. Thankfully, we live in a free country. But at the end of the day, what all of this comes down to is that it's the parent's decision to make. If a parent doesn't feel this is the right program for their child, that's okay. They won't sign them up. But I would ask that they not keep me from being able to sign up my children. I am grateful that there's a policy currently in place that our Supreme Court agrees we should have, and that is that students with parental permission may be excused during school hours for off-site religious instruction in place of another extracurricular or specialist time. I'm glad this option exists for my Fremont City Schools kids because I do believe that they could benefit from this. So I ask you as board members who represent and serve our district and our community to consider all the benefits this program offers, many of which we heard at the last board meeting, and maintain the policy that currently honors the choice of the parents and maintains the option for religious instruction if they so choose. The current policy that the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld gives parents the opportunity and the right to allow or not their child to participate in this, just like any other club or extracurricular or any other program that could be introduced in the future. Thank you, board, for everything that you do to serve this community, and I hope you continue to maintain this policy as it is to protect the religious freedoms of parents and children in our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present that has not had a prior opportunity to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Rob Harmon, 1720 Selleck Drive here in Fremont. I was at the last board meeting and I had this burning desire to say something, but there were so many people that got up and spoke, I decided not to. But this time I just wanted to speak from an educator's point of view. I taught in the Fremont City Schools for 30 years at Croghan Elementary School. My children went to the Fremont City Schools. My grandchildren are now in the Fremont City Schools. I understand the concerns some people have about students being taken out, the disruption for the classroom, missing important things in school. However, as an elementary school teacher, I taught 4th grade. I know the elementary teachers in Fremont City Schools, their priority are the children. If the children would happen to miss something because their parents and they chose to go to a LifeWise Academy, there is no elementary teacher that would let them fall behind. I can guarantee you that. They put the children first. The children that choose to go to LifeWise Academy, if it's implemented in the Fremont City Schools, that's their choice. Not everybody has to do it. I wish we could all understand that it's a choice that the parents have, and not everybody has to do it. So if there are parents, like Bree Wookie said, if there are parents that want their kids to go, they should have that choice to be able to do that. If there are parents that don't want their children to go, they have that choice also. But as an educator of elementary children, I don't think the problem of students missing school at all should be a problem for us to implement this program. And my wife and I both are in support of this program, and I hope that you would do that. Also, I'd like to say, if the students are learning they're learning religious things, of course, but they're also learning to love others and respect others and to be honest and to respect their teachers. And as a classroom teacher, one of the biggest problems that we have in the elementary age is discipline with our students. If there's something out there that can help the students to know that it's the right thing to do, to follow the rules, to respect their teacher, to love the other kids, respect the other kids in their class, then why shouldn't we try it? We did a lot of things in the 30 years that I taught in Fremont City Schools to help kids feel good about themselves, to help us with classroom management, all that the school district had to pay for. This is something that the school district doesn't have to pay for at all. It's a free service for those that want to choose to do it. And I just want you to know that there are a lot of us out there that support it. Thank you for your time.
Sir.
So good evening. I'm Solomon Whitson. I'm at 733 Nicholas Street, says in Fremont. I just got this and I don't understand it, but I do have some questions pertaining to it. It said policy manual. Then I'm looking at, say, release time for religious students studies. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Is that something they can get outside of the school?
Yes, sir.
The school can't supply that?
Unfortunately, for legal reasons, the school itself cannot provide religious instruction in the school or using any school resources to do so. The only way that students can obtain that during the school hour is if schools adopt a policy that allows parents to withdraw them from the school for one class period a week and then take them to the instruction of their choice.
Then who pays for this?
The individual organizations that provide the education.
That's what I know. What is that organization? Who is that?
Any organization can put their program together. So it's not specific to any religion. Mr. Woodson, the policy is just religious instruction. So any church, any denomination, any faith can put their own program together and make that available to students to come to one period a week.
I don't have any kids in school, but I can see that if you can transfer kids from the school to some other place that's been designated for them to go to learn some religious studies, they could also do that here in the school. Could they make what I'm saying is that, see, I went to school and that you could pray in school. I know they're going to do it now. But couldn't we fight back sometime to get prayer back in school? I mean, we got everything going on in the school now to tear down the school and nobody say nothing. But now we come in and get the little kids and train them up to what? Not to respect the school. We got kids coming into school with all kind of material and all kind of weapons and everything and killing people. And we talking about taking the little kids, transferring them off. Who paying for it? That organization?
Yes, sir.
Who's the organization?
Whichever organization chooses to provide the program.
Pardon me?
Whichever organization wants to provide a program for students, and then parents would choose which one their child would go to.
Don't the school have anything to say about taking the kids out to another establishment when you are sanctioned here in the city?
Well, this state law does allow it to happen. So it's permissive.
And unfortunately, Mr. Woodson, as I understand it now, and John, if I'm wrong, please say so, by law, as a public school, we are restricted from providing religious education here on campus. The law right now, Mr. Woodson, doesn't allow us to do that. I hear your point loud and clear, though.
Well, I don't see how the law would allow them to transfer someplace where they could teach religious if they can't teach it here. Don't make sense.
I think part of that is their effort to keep the two things separate as much as possible, because there are taxpayers who wouldn't really support the religious education. So in order to keep the tax dollars very cleanly away from the religious education, they ask them to go off school grounds. That helps?
No, sir, it doesn't.
I'm sorry.
I don't understand how the school board wouldn't fight against this. That's my problem. If the school board wants to stick up for this, the citizen of Fremont, the kids, will allow some other organization to come in and take charge? What are they going to teach them that you couldn't teach them here? Maybe you could petition the governor or the Congress or somebody else to give you a lead way to put a room somewhere that outside of this building here that they could teach religious subject. I would vote for that. And if I could take my tax dollars back, I would take my tax dollars back. That's how I feel about this. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. In the back. Okay. We'll go to you next.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was in the back or only halfway.
That's okay. If you could just state your name and address, you can fire away.
All right. My name is Tim Hillier. My address is 712 Tucker Road here in Fremont. I have 3 adult children, all of whom are graduates of the Fremont City Schools, and I worked as a substitute teacher in the Fremont City Schools for 13 years between the years of 2004 and 2017. And I would just like to publicly state my support for the LifeWise program. Being a substitute teacher, as most of you realize, can be the most challenging of positions. I have seen the types of benefits that might be gleaned from this type of program. And I would also like to reemphasize the point that was made by Mrs. Wookie and by Mr. Harmon, that this program is totally optional and is at the discretion of the parents. This is not something that will be imposed upon all of the students without the will and wishes of the people who are in the most influential decision-making position when it comes to young lives. So thank you very much for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
My name is Forrest Kirchenbauer. I live at 224 St. Paul Drive here in Fremont, and thank you very much for all that you do and how you serve the students, the families in our community. We did submit 350 signatures last time and have an additional 50 that I can share tonight with you. I just want to just say a couple things just from some of the experience of my life that addresses the decision that is on the table. I wasn't brought up in a Christian home. Somewhere there in the later part of my youth, I decided to go to a Christian college, and later that allowed me to go to a Christian camp. And this camp had a slogan that I didn't really give a lot of thought to in understanding the depth and how it would direct my life. But the slogan was, "It is easier to build boys and girls than to repair men and women." And at that time, being young and trying to figure out life, I felt a calling. I felt a real urge and desire to help students, help kids. And so spent time in youth pastor work, and then also 20 years in private religious education as a teacher and principal, and just working with families and just helping young people try to get their life in order, giving them a foundation and a direction. And so for years, even with that slogan, "It's easier to build boys and girls," my experience with that is it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. There's so much that goes into that. And I think being here at the last meeting, listening to so many educators and just people in our community, I think we know that it's become very difficult, extremely difficult. And so that slogan still holds some things that I think is powerful. As hard as it is, I think it's easier. I didn't know that my later part of my career would involve me being in pastoral work, where a portion of that does involve being with people, being with men and women who need repair in their life. And have the privilege to sit down, work with them, sit down and communicate and coordinate with institutions, organizations here, secular, not religious based, but working together to try to see, can we help repair their lives? And though there's hope, and though there's a lot of victory and help, it is way harder than it is to build boys and girls. And when you talk to people who have come through, maybe got help, got on their feet, they often will tell you that though their life may be on track, they have such regret. They wish that there were things, if it was from their family or from their school or organization, that could have been there to build a foundation in them. And so when I think of all that, I just want to compel and encourage you as board members to be thinking, is there a way that we can work together with what limitations, restrictions that we have as far as religion is concerned, but then what opportunities we have as well, that we could work together and for the same goal that we all have, the kids could have a foundation. I think all the things that LifeWise tries to build in kids in their character and their treatment of others is something that we all want for the kids and would benefit society. And I hope that that's what we'll look at. If anything has already been said, it's optional. There's an opportunity with a program that is already proven. You can measure, you can go look and investigate beliefs, systems, procedures. You can all do that and you'll see there's some success. And not only that, you'll see a great interest of parents and teachers who mutually want to have a program offered that can help kids. Last meeting, there were several things shared by educators, shared by those who study the data and are in prevention areas. It's just full of heartbreak that our kids are dealing with some of the things they're dealing with in their young parts of their life. It's just heartbreaking. I think we're at a time where there's more desperation. The need is big. And therefore, an opportunity. Could we do this? Could we partner together and work together? All these goals have nothing to do with race or politics.
I'm sorry,
Mutual.
sir. We've reached time.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, geez.
Hello, I am Kay Mooney Cox, Dr. Kay Mooney Cox, 2327 County Road 241, Fremont. And I am a Ross graduate, went all the way through Fremont schools, as did my husband. I again urge you to reject the LifeWise Academy and the Fremont school system, to reverse the policy that you created, and therefore you have the authority to reverse. 2 meetings ago, there were about 15 people here in opposition to LifeWise Academy. So Justin Smith, an important Republican in this area, came in along with Kevin Pinkerton, the pastor at Grace Community Church. Mr. Pinkerton said, I can bring 200 people. So he did at the most recent meeting. Also, Gary Click, our Republican state representative, came and made a statement in favor of LifeWise. The person who originally brought the idea to Fremont is a Republican state official. This is not an innocent desire of the Christian right to acquaint children with Christianity. It is a political move by the Christian right to establish Christian nationalism. The big pitch last time was that this would help to make the kids less depressed and less suicidal. Quite a few people said that. This is going to be a curriculum of biblical literalism, which is going to take every Bible verse as objective history. So it will be in opposition to the science and history that is taught in the public schools. This will only make kids more conflicted. It will be anti-LGBTQ. There are kids, even in grade school, who have gender issues. And what about the kids who says, I have 2 mommies? The answer they will get is that their mothers are sinful. When I lived in Idaho, which is overwhelmingly Mormon, I saw numerous obituaries of young people who I believe simply could not live with the non-acceptance of their sexuality by their community. And why assume that the teachers and other school personnel are not trying to help children who are depressed? So these uncredentialed teachers, half an hour a week, are going to solve kids' emotional issues? And the schools are teaching character education. No, this is an effort by the Christian right to grow their own movement. There are lots of mainline Protestants, Catholics, other Christians, and non-Christians who are not in favor of religious right indoctrination through the public schools. Let them offer their after-school activities on their own, not through the public schools. Thank you.
How are we on time for 30 minutes?
We have like 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes left. May I ask how many more would like to address the board? Would you raise your hand? We have 1, 2, 3. Okay. Board, I'm going to make a motion to allow an extension of 15 minutes to the 30 minutes that allows the remaining persons to speak each. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Spiritu?
Is it?
Yes.
And Ms.
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carried. So, Josie, I think you were next, please.
Thank you. I'm Josie Setzler, 918 Cleveland Avenue in Fremont. I just heard a couple of things that I wanted to answer. A gentleman talked about how teachers will certainly want to help students make up any missed work should that happen. And I do believe that teachers love their students and have their best interests at heart. But this policy does say that students assume responsibility for any missed schoolwork. That stands in the policy that everyone was handed tonight. And the issue is not just whether the teachers are moved to do this, it is that they don't have time to do it without perhaps taking time away from those who stay back. So that if you want to have real equity, so that everyone is treated the same, you do run into a problem if there's disruptions and teachers have to take time away from other instruction to make up or even to explain to a student what will have to be made up. That is going to be a problem for those students who do not take part in this curriculum. So I just wanted to make that clear since we have the policy in front of us. And then I do believe that everyone wants the best for students that have emotional problems in our school. I do want to point out that this particular program, LifeWise Academy, on its website does state under its frequently asked questions section that children who exhibit a behavioral problem when they go out to the program will be returned to the school during that period. So I would just like to make that clear that those that perhaps have some very difficult emotional problems may actually have them compounded by being separated from that opportunity and sent back to the school, where the school will then have to take care of that issue when they are returned. So that's part of the policy that I saw. And lastly, I do believe we have different understandings of religious freedom, and we are all sincere about that. I do believe that because of the diversity of religious views in a public institution, our freedom is best served by doing religious instruction outside the school day, especially because there will be extensive peer pressure, I believe, from child to child when there's an opportunity to leave the school and it's perceived as something that their friends are doing. That does impact parents' religious freedom. And that's why when I say religious freedom, I think of taking it out of a place where there's this diversity and doing it in the after school and on weekends. I think that best respects parents' religious freedom. Thank you.
And Maydell Leak, I think you were next.
I'm not going to take much of your time. My name is Maydell Leak, and I am a 1976 graduate of Fremont Ross High School. As you see my shirt, I turned 65 this year. I had 3 kids graduate from Fremont Ross and went on to college. They had very good teachers throughout their career at Fremont City School District, and they did very well in college and moved on to very good careers. However, their experience didn't come without bumps and bruises, okay? So we're living in the real world here. We're not living where everything that is glitter is gold, okay? Looks like gold. Basically, I am reminded of my favorite author, what James Baldwin once said. He said that I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. Okay. I did do some research since my last board meeting. I wasn't here at the previous board meeting, but I was here at the board meeting before. So I did do some research on LifeWise. And what I did see is it is part of the evangelical movement. Okay. And whether we want to take a historical perspective of the evangelical movement and the impact on enslaved people, or we want to look at what's going on currently today, and I won't do that because it will take up too much time. But I do want to say that whether you vote for this to remove this or not, you know, if you leave things like it, I personally have had extensive experience in working with all kids in this district, thousands of kids. I've heard what they've had to say. I've expressed some of the concerns to the superintendent. He's aware of what, and this is before LifeWise ever came about. So there are some real concerns culturally, and we know how peer pressure works. No program for youth ever works without peer pressure. I mean, we can recruit all we want, but until students go back and tell their friends how it works, tell their parents how, then that's how we get the students in the door. And if LifeWise is not prepared to deal with students of color in Fremont City School District, because I really don't see anybody out there that reflects who looks like me, I guess, except the people in my role that I brought here, it kind of concerns me. So I'm not here to object to what people believe, whose God they believe in. I'm not here to, you know, cast my dispersions on the Bible or anything else like that. I mean, people have a right to feel and worship the way they want to worship. But my concern is that kids of color have so much to deal with right now. Adults have so much to deal with right now. This evangelical movement poses a threat to our voting rights. So that's why it's political, because I'm pretty sure no one's going to raise their hand here. But if I ask the question about who you really voted for, or these 4 churches or 3 churches that are going to, you know, take part in this, you know, it's not going to it's not going to be in favor of my voting rights, kids of color's voting rights. You know, what was the Supreme Court just passed, voted against affirmative action, right? And now colleges are looking at getting rid of African-American scholarships. And so, you know, I don't really care who you worship, what you do, but I do care about these kids. And I have that experience in knowing what these kids have said to me personally. I know some members, one of these churches, my nieces and nephews attend, you know, out on Smith Road. So they go out there. So it's not like I'm here talking against a particular church. I'm here because of the kids. And I know the way when kids are in certain situations, because when my kids were in certain situations in the public schools and they went outside of there was racism and discrimination in those organizations. And I know that, and I see some teachers in the audience who know that too, because we've had conversations about that. You know, did the teachers do it? Some teachers did. Did the organizations do it? Yes, they did. Okay.
I'm afraid we have time.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
That's okay.
Thank you. There was yes. Mr. Smith?
My name is Justin Smith, 1119 Borchard Avenue here in Fremont. I had no intention of speaking tonight, but since my name was rudely brought up by a previous commentator, I'm speaking to let you know that I have attended several school board meetings for the last 21 to 22 years, going back to when I was a student at Fremont Ross High School. So being here tonight or being at the last few board meetings have nothing to do with the Republican Party or nothing to do with politics. I truly do care about the youth of the community. Serving as a city councilman and having a bachelor's degree myself in social studies education, I have been a teacher, a substitute teacher in Fremont schools and several districts throughout the county. So I can honestly say there is no Republican conspiracy in Sandusky County that supports this. I do personally support LifeWise Academy, but it is not no political conspiracy. That is the farthest thing from the truth. I support LifeWise Academy because I believe we need to teach children to have the values that we all share, the values of treating people with respect and treating people with kindness. And I believe that the COVID lockdowns and all the school closings have kind of negatively impacted education in the last few years. And I think our kids are suffering. The youth of Fremont is suffering. And I think this is a great thing. And it has nothing to do with the Republican Party. And I take great offense to that because I have been coming to these board meetings for years, whether there is controversy or not. And you, most of you do know that as well. So I express my support for LifeWise Academy as an individual, but not anything to do with the Republican Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that takes us up to, yeah, out there. Okay. Thank you. Like I said, there's been a great deal of community participation in the conversation, some present, some through email, some through phone call. Clearly people care very much on all sides of this. I want to clarify the question brought to the board at hand. I think there is a distinction that needs to be made between, does Fremont City Schools support LifeWise Academy, or does Fremont City Schools support a parent's choice to dismiss their child for religious education? That they're two different questions. The one officially on the table tonight is the policy. The policy being that as of now, the board allows a parent to choose for their child to be dismissed one class a week to attend the religious education of their choice. So I think it's very important to make that distinction. I'd like to remind everybody that should the board continue with the policy, it's not specific to any one religious organization. Any religious organization would have the opportunity to put their program together, and students would be allowed to participate in theirs should their parent choose to allow that. So just very important to make that distinction. With that, I'm going to share my thoughts on the matter. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I think that that's part of what people are wanting to hear. What is the board choosing to do or not do, and why? And I think for myself that that's a fair request of me to ask me where I stand. So I will do that. When I think about this, I've listened very closely to the credential educators on both sides. And they've spoken from both sides, equally credentialed. I've listened to parents from both sides. And, the students' perspective themselves. I've had a chance to talk to some students and think and hear what they have to think on the matter. If the ask is to repeal the policy, for me, where that lands is repealing a parent's choice. It is not the question of, do we support LifeWise Academy? The answer to that's no. Fremont City Schools, as a board, does not support nor endorse any one specific religion or religious organization. That is for the citizens to choose for themselves. But the policy does allow for a parent to make a choice on behalf of their child to participate in the religious education of their choice. So I'm choosing not to make a motion to repeal or modify the policy for that reason. If my children were still in school, if I had one struggling, I would absolutely keep them in their academic education and take care of their religious instruction outside. I would make those choices. But again, I would make that choice as their parent. So a lot of very good points made on both sides. For me, that's where I'm landing in honoring a parent's choice. I want to make it very clear in discussion with LifeWise. Got to make a point earlier that I want to circle back to with the vetting process, because you bring up some good points. You know, I do not know LifeWise myself. I have not vetted it personally, so I can't speak in favor or against of. But as a parent, that is something you need to research. Any organization outside of the school does not get the school's vetting. It's outside of our legal authority to ask LifeWise, what's your insurance? What's the credentials of your teachers? That's outside of our legal right to do that. They are an outside organization. I think it is a good question to ask no matter what the organization is. And there are plenty of people available representing LifeWise that can answer those questions for you and can provide that information. So I think there was some exchange in the last meeting and then the one before about insurances and some questions answered about credentialing. And I think that was specific to LifeWise itself. But as a board and board members, when we're sitting in these seats during the meetings, we can only answer what we know as a school, right? So for me, I am choosing not to make a motion to repeal the policy. I'm choosing to let it stand with the parent's choice. With that, I'm going to open it up. And if any other board members would like to respond to the discussion tonight or share your thoughts, there's certainly the opportunity to do that. You are not required to, just simply making that available. So if we start, Mrs. Bloom, is there anything that you'd like to say? If not, you can leave the policy stand and that's it.
I won't make a motion to repeal. It's a choice between parents and the families. And I do have grandchildren in the school system. I have 3. And I have 2 that go to one church, but they went to another denomination for their preschool, and the one's still in preschool. And there's no confusion between them. If you talk to them, they're learning the same thing there as they learn in their church. So I'm not going to repeal. Make a motion.
Mary Alice, you're welcome to share thoughts. You don't have to, but if you'd like to address the audience, you may.
Some comments I'm going to make I've made before in the previous meetings, but I just like to say I think that the LifeWise or any other program, I think it's beneficial for some families and some students. Do I think it's for all families and it's a fit all? No. There's a lot of different faiths, religions out there, denominations that different families believe in. Having the policy, I do agree that it gives the parents options, but I also think that it takes opportunities away from the students from having to give up an art, music, gym, library time. I think it does take that opportunity away from them to be able to do something else. I ask and wonder and think, is there an option for it to get offered after school, any type of religious thing? And the students would be able to participate in their school day and in something else and won't have to miss out on anything. I mean, the school day, I think it's important for the students to take the opportunity to take advantage of the teachers, the staff, the opportunity that they're there to receive the help that they need, if it's educational, if it's other needs. I know we have counseling and different things. I think during the school day is the opportunity for them to do that. And if other things can be offered outside of the school, I think that would be a better option. I do not think that the religious time should be done during the school day.
And Sarah, if you'd like to share anything, you may. You're not required.
I would just share right now that at this time, and I stress at this time, I would not choose to repeal. The reason I say at this time, I am here in place to serve the public, and I am still getting emails almost daily from people, and I don't feel like I've heard from everybody who this will impact, and I don't want to make a decision at this point when I know I haven't heard from people who will truly be impacted by this, and I want to make sure that I have that opportunity to hear from people, again, who this would impact greatly. I, as a parent, would not have my child participate because it's my duty to take care of her, our religious beliefs as a family. I concur that there's a lot of conflict with what's on the table right now that I do have some strong thoughts and feelings about. I don't think we can just sweep under the rug that there would be no impact to the school day. I don't think that's realistic to say. I do have emails from teachers that have expressed concern about that. I do work in the field. I work as the assistant director of our detention center here. So I am 100% no stranger to the issues that plague our children in our community, and work hard every day to help those children and families. So this is something that's very important to me, to make sure that I take the time and responsibility to do well, and that's my intention.
Thank you. Board members, I thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think that's an important part of community discussion that is this broad. As elected officials, they've asked us to be their voice, and they want to know where we stand. And I think that's helped bring some clarity to next steps for everyone. So we know procedurally what needed to happen to change the policy. And we're moving forward with it as it is. As Sarah said, for now, community discussions and policy reviews are always ongoing. So with that, there's a few takeaways that I'd like to move into that I think are appropriate at this time in the agenda. I'd like to talk about the policy of circulation of materials. I just think organically, given the conversation we just had. Colleagues, I'm going to ask you to consider something, and this is not a voting matter at this time. I'm going to ask that we modify the language, look at modifying the language in the distribution of materials in school, as that was a point of contention, and understandably so. And my request after some discussion on that would be for Mr. Detweiler to put some drafts together for us and then bring that back in the form of discussion. So no action needed for this one, because we're not looking at anything to take action on, but for Mr. Detweiler to consider some things. So Mr. Detweiler, it says if we take a look at a not-for-profit outside organization may request that literature promoting an event, activity, or program open to students in the district be distributed directly to students, and or that information, literature not related to the event activities be made available in school buildings for students to take. I guess, what are our feelings on that? Because there's a difference in my mind between distribution of materials, making them available to take. So that's one area that I would like to see what other districts have specifically with the actual physical distribution. So if you could research for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe even just rest the county. You don't have to do the whole state. Just rest the county. How do they have that language there? And then maybe some discussion on that. And as of this time, John, you've put together in your procedure that you manage the the disclaimer,
Disclaimer,
the
yeah.
non-endorsement disclaimer. I think that for me, procedures modify and change over time as they need to. But I think the distinction of making community members very clear of what is a school-sponsored activity that the school has vetted as insured and is ensuring
Right.
versus a non-school program that does not have school vetting and relies on parental discretion. To make that a requirement, I think that's best housed in policy. I would like to see us require that disclaimer in policy. And then the language of that would be up to your implementation as that needs modified from time to time.
That would certainly give it more teeth, for sure.
I think so. I think one thing that we understood, especially at the very beginning, was the misunderstanding of, is this happening in school? Is this a school program? You know, what is going on? So I do think I'd like to see us provide more clarity of that in policy. Does anybody have any comments on that? Are we all right if John put some drafts together for us and some research for us to consider? Okay. Are there any other comments before we move on to the remainder of the agenda? Right. Moving on to the superintendent's report,
Hold on,
please.
hold
Oh,
on. Sleep.
any. Okay, that's a good question. Any community member can bring any issue to the board at any time. So this is the way that the board has chosen to, I guess, act by not acting, allowing it stay based on the information that we have now. But on any issue at any time, community members can bring it to the board and the board can consider at that time. So by saying that as of now, no one's made a motion does not lock the board into a commitment for any time frame. But that is true of any policy, and that's always been the case. It's an open discussion for consideration with community on any policy. Does that answer your question okay, Maydell? I don't think that we're bound by those. I think that there are some governing bodies that are, but I'm not aware that a school board is bound by any restrictions on the frequency and timeline of discussion.
Yeah, there's one thing the board really has control of, and that's policy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mrs. Laird, when you responded to the question on the floor, you said community members can bring things up at any time, but board members can as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, absolutely. That is a given in the function of a board member. We have agendas that we go by and we follow Robert's Rules of Order. But any board member can bring up any concern and can, put forth any suggestion or recommendation of any kind at any time. Very, very open styled meeting. Yes. I think that's a legitimate question. Let me hold on for one formality. Whenever we have the public participation, we are supposed to utilize the podium. Because Maydell has already been on record and identified herself, I think we're good. Zesta, you good? If this Zesta? Okay.
Ms. Laird,
All
it might be useful too
Please.
if you would restate the question for those at home in the microphone, because they will never hear what she has said.
You want to come on up? Would you do that? That'd be great. I think that's a great question.
My back is awful. Lester Johnson, 917 Bell Drive, number 1, graduate from 1986. I got about 14 kids that helped go through. And my question was, so if I want to take my child out or my religion, how do I do that?
That's a procedural question, John. I'm going to defer to you.
This is my first time too, Ms. Johnson. I promise you, we're learning a lot through this. But I think there'd be no distinction. So I think if your church or your pastor or even maybe you wanted to pull that child out at the same time and give them religious instruction, I can't imagine there'd be an issue with that. I can't see anything in the policy or the law that would stop you from doing that.
So does it have to be just allotted time, or can that be, I don't know, because I'm asking for a Muslim friend.
Yep.
Because, they pray throughout the day. What do they do?
Yeah. I think they could do that. Now, I think the policies talks about it can't miss a core. You have to miss all those criteria. It can't miss a core class. Can be during an elective class. I think as long as it met all those criteria, it'd be no issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also want to clarify too, kids can always pray in school. There's a misnomer that kids can't pray. They can pray. They have their own rights to pray. They do. So I just want to make sure that's really clear.
Amen.
Yeah. Good for you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Moving on to the superintendent's report, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Board, and thank you for your diligent effort and work on this issue. It's July 10th, and anybody who knows schools knows what July 10th means. That is the sort of the last day that a staff member can resign and still be covered by no retribution. So we're kind of holding our breath till midnight tonight that we don't have any surprise retirements or resignations, but we are almost fully staffed. We're real close. So I think that's worth noting. The only thing else I had tonight, I didn't want to belabor because I knew we'd have some other things on the agenda. House Bill 33 passed last week, and it was a doozy. There's a lot in there that we're going to get a lot more about, and you'll be hearing a lot about it. I can see an entire work session just on the content of House Bill 33, which is the governor's budget bill. But the most significant two I want to mention tonight, they have literally transformed the Ohio Department of Education. It is now been relegated to only be in charge of teacher discipline, teacher licensure, and a couple other things, almost managerial issues. All of the instruction is going into called the Department of Education and Workforce, which will be housed in the governor's office. So, and that will be the primary and secondary education, and that's all the Division of Career and Technical Education. So there's a whole lot of questions. I know Denise and I talked today. What does this mean to us? Because we always have people we go to at the Ohio Department of Ed when we have questions about procedures or laws or grants or whatever. Where are those people going? What's going to happen now? Who is answering those questions? There's a lot to figure out with this significant of a change. And we're also worried, as I think I've shared before, that what happens then if there's a shift in governorship? How does that all change, and what's that trickle down? And is there a wave of change, and how do we keep up, and how do we manage? But so a lot of questions to come. I had 8 pages printed out. I promise you I won't do that, but that was one I wanted to share. That was huge. The other one is the Ed Choice Scholarship Program. This is a needs-based, full statewide funding source for parents who want to choose a different school for their child, and it is needs-based, based on the family's income, up to $6,000 for kindergarten through 8th grade, and over $8,000 for high school age students. To qualify for that, students need to be above the 450% of the federal poverty level to qualify. And that's a big one. And we'll see what the impact of that is. I can really envision a lot of startup schools and other ways that people will try to use that. And I think it's going to mean that we just have to be more competitive and keep sharp and make sure we're offering the best product that we can. Only other last one I wanted to make sure you knew about was on the table again is also a 3rd grade reading guarantee. So there are some major changes there. So we'll be working with our families here in the next few weeks to make sure that we understand what the law means and what it means to our students. The word is that it's taken that hardcore retention element off the table, but we still have those conversations with families to have, and some guidance yet needed from the state. So those are the big things. There's some more there, but just want to let you know there's a lot a lot to talk about with the new state budget. Good news is on the financial side, just the school funding side, we seem to fare pretty well. We'll get, Megan told me, she called me Thursday, I think, when she heard maybe about $3 million more in this next budget. So that'd be good for us. So some of the other scenarios had us flat or even up like $200,000. So this is that part was very good for us. That's kind of that on House Bill 33. Any questions on any of that I can help you with? Okay. With permission, Ms. Laird, I'll continue on with the agenda.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Under staff, then we have item 1, Amanda Nowak as a psychologist. With your permission, we will hire her this evening. Following appointments, we have Chase Arndt at Atkinson, Brittany Burmeister, math here at the middle school, and Devin Siderson, Fremont Middle School Science. I'd also like to point out right out there in the back row, Brittany, would you raise your hand? Brittany came and sat through all of that to make sure that she watched herself be hired tonight. Brittany, welcome to Fremont City Schools. We're very glad to have you. You're welcome. They're not all like this, I promise. Then going on, Michael Ickes is Fremont Middle School custodian. That's in the OPSI section. Item 3, an administrative appointment. We have our psychologist in our administrative portion of our organization. So Heather Justin, as a psychologist, with your permission, will be hired this evening as a school psychologist. Supplemental duty positions, you see them down there on the left, Gerald Bender, Devon Churcha, Christian Newman, and Joshua Smith in various coaching positions with your approval. Item 5 on the next page, special event workers. You see everyone that we hired to sort of help us get our events taken care of. I'd like to especially point out Krista Walker and how much she helps us. You see her there. She's listed 5 times. She's just a worker bee, and we really appreciate everything that Crystal does for us. I saw her here earlier. She's still here. I think I saw her. Item 6, some status changes. Catherine Knight. Oh, she is back there. Oh, I was talking about her. There she sits. Catherine Knight, status change. Rebecca Heron and Samantha Griffin. All status changes due to longevity or continued education. Those are personnel items for this evening.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve items 1 through 6, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion?
Mr. Detweiler,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you said for item 1, I think you said hire, but it's listed under resignation.
Thank you.
So just some clarity.
I appreciate that. That would matter. Amanda would be very surprised, I think, wouldn't she? If we,
I heard that and I thought, maybe.
No, I apologize. Thank good catch. For the record, item 1 is a resignation. Thank you.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mrs. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Tonight, board, I'd like to, and in your packet, and I think you got it emailed to you, was the administrative compensation plan. And there's only a couple changes, and I'd like to explain them to you so you know exactly what you're voting on. Most of them, we just did a similar bump as we got through negotiations with our teachers. We just kind of did the same thing for our administrative staff, except for a couple of things. Our athletic director was making less on our schedule, was making less than an assistant principal at Ross High School. And we just thought that maybe with the time committed and the director level responsibilities and the credentials that are just as high as an assistant principal. So I've moved the athletic director line up to be equal the assistant principal line on the high school staff. So I just want you to know that's in there to make sure that we're transparent there. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do considering the schedule, the hours, and the responsibility. The elementary principals, with the raise that the teachers got, it actually put some teachers beyond principals. So we did a little adjusting to try to give the principals a little bit more of a bump to keep that gap similar to what we were getting in some other areas between teaching staff and administration staff. I think we had a very generous negotiation with our teachers. We want to make sure then that we didn't pass principals with that gain. So it's not a lot, but a little bit to make sure there was still a gap. The other two then are the assistant treasurer, Justin as our assistant treasurer, and EMIS coordinator, Mandy Miller. Those two positions have grown in responsibility. Anybody that knows EMIS that's everything that we do goes into the computer: salaries, student records, funding, residents, all of our student records. It's a tremendous job, and the assistant treasurer job is always pretty stressful too. And we did a little comparison with those positions and other districts, and we were low. And we thought we have good people. We want to make sure that we don't lose them. So for Justin and Mandy, there's a little bit more than the others in that to make sure that they are staying competitive with other districts. So I just want to make sure that you knew kind of where the big changes were. Everything else is corresponding to the raises that we gave to teachers. That's our administrative compensation plan.
May I have a motion to approve item 7, please?
So moved.
Motion moved by Ms. Lewis. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Miss Lewis,
Yes.
Miss Espiritu,
Yes.
yes, and Miss Laird.
Yes.
Miss Bloom.
Thank you very much. Moving on, item 8, our handbook for our non-union classified staff. That there weren't any particular lines changed. We just did the same thing proportionally that we did with our OPSI contract to make sure that that was similar. So no changes there, nothing to highlight. Just need your approval this evening.
May I have a motion to approve item 8, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes, Mrs. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Espiritu,
Yes.
Miss Laird.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carried. With Megan's absence this evening, we'll move her report to the next meeting. So let's close with board member communication and information. Mrs. Bloom.
Well, it's great to see a lot of people that come out and want to support children and families and put their opinion in and let everybody know how everybody's feeling. And it's great to see the new teachers being hired. Congratulations to them and all the new coaches and psychologists and other support staff that we get. And I think that's it.
I just like to mention, I always thank the community for coming out and voicing their concerns, their opinions, their support. I mean, it really means a lot to me to hear the different opinions. I mean, I get phone calls, emails, just like the rest of the board members do. And it's very important to me to hear. And I like when everybody comes in. I mean, sometimes it gets a little stressful, a little hot in here. But I mean, it is very important to me to hear all sides and to hear what the community needs and their feelings on things. So I always like to thank them. Thank you guys when you guys come in. I'm glad to hear, Mr. Detweiler, that we're almost fully staffed.
Yeah, almost.
I'll cross my fingers
Yeah.
for you by midnighty.
Yeah, right.
That none of that changes.
Right.
So in the middle of summer, getting
Yeah.
ready to
Things happen. Yeah.
get this school year started.
Yeah,
So.
for sure.
Ms. Lewis.
Again, congratulations to everybody coming on board. I think it is important to hear from the community, and I take that piece of my responsibility here very seriously. I want to make sure, like I said, I represent the community, and I want to make sure that I do that well. And I know that that is not singular to me. I know that is all of us up here. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to do so. I'm going to continue to say, for as long as we need to say it, what a great problem we have that there's a lot of people in our community that care a lot about kids, so much so that they want to have their voices heard. That's not always the case in every community. So I'm glad that we have a community that cares deeply about our children and our voicing opinions. I think we all take those thoughts and opinions very seriously. We don't take any email lightly. We don't take anybody who comes to the podium and their thoughts and feelings lightly. We take them all under consideration. And I think that's very important to know, no matter where we land as a district. So thank you all, and thank you all.
Like everyone, I want to thank all of you for participation and not just this meeting, but the several meetings that we've had. This is my 8th year as a school board member. And through those years, we've had several hot topics, if that's what you want to call them. You know, the very same things that we see on the news play out right here in our hometown. They mean a lot to us as well. And I have always been so very impressed and proud of my hometown community in the way that we treat one another in the midst of conflict, at least in our school board meetings. People, for the most part, have been respectful of one another. They've listened to one another. They've allowed each person speaking to have their time to say what's on their mind and the opportunity to be heard. And you've all allowed the same of each of us as well. I think the best thing you can do to teach your kids is model what it is you want them to perform. And Fremont modeled this conversation and how to manage conflict resolution so very well for our children. And one thing's for certain, no matter where you land on this particular question, there is no question that Fremont cares about its children. We really did have equal representation of both sides advocating for what they felt was best for children here in the city of Fremont, if not present in the emails and in the phone calls and so on. And Josie, as you said it, everybody is looking to try to do what they think is best for children. So I want to thank you all for that. That's all I have for this evening. Unless there's any other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
A yes for me. Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carried. Adjourn.